Hi everyone. Hello. So we'll just give you a couple of moments to get on this live action and wait for Sarah Taylor to come and join us, who I'm so excited to have join us today. So Sarah is a coach who specialises on working with women. Oh, dogs are barking. There's also someone at my door. Bear with me, everyone. Sarah, I'm going to let you in just a moment. Perfect timing. Work from home live.
Hello, you're right.
Cheers.
Fabulous.
Thank you. Okay, guys, stay with me. I'm here. Exciting things. Okay. So we're just waiting for Sarah to come in. Hoping that this is going to be my interruption today. Hi, Sarah.
Hey.
Hi. So I live in the countryside and my Wi-Fi is unreliable at best. And it's been particularly, what should we say, glitchy over the last few days. So I'm hoping that the postman knocking on the door and the dog's barking is the interruption for this call, and we got it over and done with in the first moment.
No worries.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, and welcome. I'm so glad that you agreed to talk to me, to kind of share more about your work and your insights that you have.
Yeah. Really happy to be here, Jo. Thank you so much for inviting me to talk about my work and what I do, and to share some of I think one of the things we've been talking about is how some of the challenges with relationships and things like that might be very similar for queer people actually, but also where some of the differences might be. So I'm looking forward to exploring that a bit with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's so much value in hearing from someone who has that direct experience. I know that a lot of my clients really value that in me, that I identify as someone who is a recovering codependent, so I can really give them that first-hand experience and a complete lack of judgment in the way that I work with them. But that isn't necessarily something that I can give to my queer community. I identify as cis and heterosexual, and so I really wanted to get you on today because I want to share your message. I want to enable people to connect with you, people who do have a similar experience to you. So yeah, I think it's really important. So can you tell us a little bit about your work and kind of what you do and how you work with people to get us started?
Of course. So I'll start, if that's all right. I'll start with the fact that I'm a gay woman and I use the pronouns she, her and hers. I think that's one thing, that is really great for everybody to get used to in terms of, the landscape and the environment within which we're working. If we want to be inclusive, and I know it's not something that certainly cisgendered heterosexual people naturally think about, but I'm also really encouraged by the fact that I'm seeing it a lot more in a lot of more sort of heterosexual cisgendered spaces. So I think that's a really great thing to kind of try and start getting into the practice of for all of us. And I suppose that's, that sort of feeds into the assumptions that are made all the time, and just to sort of raise awareness around that is one of the things that I'm really passionate about. I mean, my primary work that I do is helping queer women understand and really heal their shame around their sexuality, so or their gender identity, and really that's about helping them to live fully as themselves and really embrace and accept and love that part of themselves, because a lot of women and men. I primarily work with women in my one-to-one coaching and group coaching programs, really struggle with. And that then, which should be no surprise, but really holds them back from being able to fully, you know, embrace and all of their creativity, all of their uniqueness, all of their amazing gifts and brilliant ideas and, you know, ambitions that they have for their life. It's one of the big things that can get in the way. And I suppose that I got into this work really because of my own personal experience, which is what you sort of alluded to at the beginning there. You know, I spent the first 30 years of my life living as a straight woman, basically. And so I would be, you know, and I don't really like this term, but I am a later in life lesbian, you know, and that's kind of like, there's a lot of women out there who have either discovered that they're not straight later in life, or they've been, you know, struggling to try and fit into that heteronormative box and denying their sexuality. And that's what I did for a really long time. I denied my sexuality, I repressed it, I felt the feelings and I had the attraction, but I was so terrified of it, and it just brought up so much self anxiety and self sort of disgust almost. You know, I couldn't believe that I was feeling these things and no one else was talking about it, and it just made me feel really alone and isolated. And I think it affected, you know, I was shrinking, I was filtering, I wasn't talking about it. And it affected not only my sort of friendships and my relationship with my family, but also me at work. You know, I was in a corporate career for most of my, you know, I've been working for myself for the last sort of 5 or 6 years. And up until that point, I've had senior positions in large corporate organizations. And a lot of that time I was either not out at all or, you know, out in some parts of my life at work, but not completely. So, and I'm only as since I've left am I now kind of realizing how much that shrunk me, I suppose, and how much it limited. So I'm really passionate about helping other women to not struggle as long as I did, and to help them get their amazing stuff out into the world, you know, because I work with a lot of women who have got either they want to start a business, grow a business, or they've got passion projects they want to get off the ground, you know, and fantastic ideas. And it just breaks my heart that they're like, this stuff's in the way, you know, and stopping them. One of the big things that's stopping them from being all they can be. So
I really relate to that, Sarah, because I spent the first 30 years of my life being codependent as fuck, and that really held me back. I really relate to that feeling of when there's a part of you that either isn't fully expressed or in some way maybe feels unresolved or out of alignment, that it seeps into every area of your life. I've been self-employed for a long time, and I had so many like false starts in my business and in my work, because I wasn't clear on who I am as a person and what were the parts that I kind of needed to work on. And so then I wasn't clear in my work, and I wasn't clear in the way I was expressing myself, and only now do I see that. So I really resonate with what you're saying. Obviously, it's kind of coming from different angles, but it makes a lot of sense to me, and I completely identify with that feeling of kind of playing small or keeping myself small, or because I'm keeping parts of myself hidden. So of course, we can't be like holistically out there if we're not being who we really are. I really feel that. So I have a couple of questions that I want to ask you. So a lot of what I work with my clients on is in codependent recovery is about like building their self-worth, that is the foundation for me. Essentially having a better relationship with themselves so that they can have better relationships outside of themselves, healthy relationships with other people. Can you talk about the ways that queer people specifically are maybe affected by issues of low self-worth, or maybe not having a good relationship with themselves, or maybe even a relationship with themselves at all?
Yeah, there's a few things here that come to mind. I suppose the first one is around, which I've touched on a little bit already, which is internalized homophobia. So if anyone's not familiar with that term or what it means, you may have heard it, and I guess maybe the way to illustrate it initially is for me to tell you about my own personal experience with this. So internalized homophobia is basically when you believe that being gay is wrong, it's bad, it's dirty, it's, abnormal, all of that kind of stuff. So you believe almost like the societal norms and cultural norms and some of those beliefs around homosexuality. And you turn that inwards onto yourself. So when I first I think it was my therapist actually at the time, I was having a conversation with her about an internalized homophobia came up, and I was like, well, how can I be homophobic? I'm gay, And I just thought, I just like the penny dropped, that was what I was doing to myself, was turning all of that, all of those beliefs that I grew up with, and, it might sound a bit extreme, but I believe that we do grow up to be homophobic. I was taught by my parents, and the messaging that, I was a child a long time ago, and the messaging around at that time, I grew up in the AIDS crisis. I was a teenager, I think I was in my early 20s, when all of that was happening. It was just, shocking. Anyone that might be watching or listening to this, if you were around then, we got leaflets through the door that had gravestones on them, with RIP, and that was like the AIDS sort of like marketing stuff. Marketing, if that's the right word, but like the health, warning and all the rest of it. So that internalized homophobia, that kind of where you sort of believe that to be true about yourself, even though you might not be fully aware of it, and I don't think I was at the time, that then obviously is going to cause you to do the filtering, do the shrinking, trying to fit in, trying to, it's like constant alert as well, all the time. They're sort of like scanning the environment to see if you're going to be accepted, if someone's going to be okay with it. Do you tell them? Do you not tell them? Then you have those conversations that happen about your partner or boyfriends or all of that stuff, and inside you're like going, oh fuck, I don't know how to kind of navigate this. It's really anxiety provoking. And it feels really isolating as well if you haven't got somebody to talk to about it, or someone else that is in the LGBTQ plus community. So I think that's one of them. I think coming out as well, in terms of how that can affect your self-worth, the experiences that you have of that, because we're coming out all the time. Every new person we meet, we're coming out. So it's not a one-off event. Obviously, there's like the first time, and the first time you come out is to yourself, basically. And that lasts as long as it lasts. For some people, they may just need quite a lot of time to adjust to that and get used to it. And again, doing that on your own can be really isolating and quite scary, and like especially if it's something that comes as, you know, it depends how you do it. I mean, I kind of like came to terms with the fact that I was gay in quite a extreme way, I think, for me anyway. So I basically got drunk at a party and ended up spending the night at a woman's house. You know, that was my kind of realization. So I woke up with like a massive hangover and like, it, you know, what the hell happened? And the process after that was really anxiety provoking for me, because I had to really explore what was going on. And it was a light, you know, it's a light bulb moment. It was there was no question for me because of the experience I had, without going into detail. But, you know, I knew then that was it. And then everything that had happened up to that point made sense. You know, all of the attractions that I'd had before that, really, that I'd been repressing and suppressing. Coming out, I think it depends on how accepting people are. You know, if you come out to your family, your parents. I mean, I told my brother, and I think my brother's younger than me, and at the time he went, "Oh, that's really cool," you know, and I was like, I mean, it was a positive reaction, but he was like, "Yeah, I've got some gay friends," you know, and he was like, that was his reaction. And my mum and dad was a bit different, you know, and I think that it took a long time, like years, I'd say 10 years really, probably for me personally, before I was able to have the conversations that I really wanted to have with my parents. And I think that support with that would have been really helpful as well, because I struggled to know how to talk to them about it. And like I say, coming out every day to different people, potentially, how do you decide at work, you know, in the workplace? There's still a lot of people in the workplace who aren't out about their sexuality, their sexual orientation, because they're afraid that they'll be discriminated against. And I think a lot of people are surprised about that, even in large, you know, corporate organisations in London, you know, which is where I worked. The figures are quite high of people that, young people, I'm talking about graduates go back in the closet when they start, you know, at big organisations, because they're afraid it's going to hold them back in their careers. You know, it's just not good, but it's definitely a thing. You know, surveys have been done, recent surveys have proved that. And then I suppose in terms of self-worth and how it can kind of like impact us when we're in relationships, it's things like holding your partner's hand when you're walking down the street. Even that is something that most people I know in the queer community, if they're with a same-sex partner, will either just have a flash, you know, it's a spectrum thing. So they'll either have a flash of like anxiety or worry, or what happens if I see somebody from this part of my, you know, my life, maybe their professional life, they're not out at work. What happens if they see someone from work and they're holding their girlfriend's hand, to, you know, absolutely not doing it at all. And it's such a sad thing, really. You know, that again makes me feel so sad that, again, I think a lot of assumptions are made that it's all okay now, you know, because we've got equal marriage or whatever the thing is. And the reality is that it's not really okay. I mean, people know, you know, there have been hate crimes and stuff in the news quite recently. Remember the 2 girls on the bus? Don't you remember that one on the night bus?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
You know? But there's a lot more than that goes on, you know, probably not necessarily, hopefully, to that extent, you know, just daily kind of like microaggressions, I suppose.
Absolutely.
You know, like getting shouted at by some blokes in a van. With one of my friends the other day, you know, some blokes went past her and shouted "dyke" out the window. you know, stuff like that. It's harmful. It might
Yeah.
seem small, but it is harmful. And when I hear about it, it harms me too, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're the sorts of things. And I think the other piece is around the inclusion. So in terms of self-worth and how that can affect you, if you're in spaces where they don't feel inclusive, there's like a
Yeah.
minority stress that comes up. So
Yes.
am I the only, you know, gay person here, bisexual person, queer person, whatever it might be? And how does that feel when everyone's sort of using heteronormative language and talking about husbands and boy, I don't know, and like, yeah,
Yeah.
it can feel, and those sorts of things I never used to notice. I just used to accept that's how it was, you know.
Yeah.
And I was the
Yeah. And
one that was different.
I think definitely like the majority of my community and my client base are women. And I think so many of us can identify with that, you know, whatever our like sexual orientation or expression is, that we, you know, there's going to be a time in our life when we've been the only woman in a room full of men, for example, and you know, like we know what that feels like. And of course then you add in the intersection of maybe being queer, maybe being a person of color, maybe being differently abled, and it's like you are loading on that minority stress. And I really, really appreciate you speaking about this, Sarah, because as someone who's through all the identities that I hold, I'm second only in privilege to a white cis het able-bodied man, that I'm trying to really be conscious about making sure that my spaces are more inclusive, that we are in my coaching groups, we're talking about you know, we're introducing ourselves with our pronouns, that I'm using more gender neutral language, because you know, codependency doesn't discriminate. Codependency affects queer people, it affects trans people. It doesn't matter whether your partner is a man or a woman or non-binary, like you can still be codependent. So yeah, I really, really appreciate you bringing bringing more consciousness to that, bringing more awareness to that, and even just this conversations like this help to keep holding me accountable, because it is really easy as someone who is cis and het to slip into heteronormative ways. And you know, when people are I don't know if this is the correct term to use, but closeted, if people are not out, then like we could be excluding them without even realizing. There are definitely more like queer people out there than we know about, or than are outwardly expressing. And so we need to make sure those of us with privilege are consciously making spaces inclusive. And the thing that really sort of hit home for me was when you talked about people maybe feel uncomfortable holding their partner's hand in public, and something so simple that like everyone should feel comfortable doing. Like we should not live in a society where you cannot hold your partner's hand. And yet through my heteronormative gaze, I know how uncomfortable people must feel, because when I do see same-sex partners holding hands, it feels different because it's so infrequent. And it's not something that I judge. I quite like it. I'm like, yes, more of this, please, more of this. Let's have more diversity, more inclusion, more real life, right? More of like literally all the colors of the rainbow, because we are not one size fits all. But I know, because it's so infrequent. I think I might have seen maybe one or two same-sex couples holding hands in the last year that I can remember. Wow. And I live 30 miles outside of London. You know, it's not like, it's wild. So yeah,
Yeah.
like I can
So
imagine that weighs
interesting.
really heavy on people. Like, how can you value yourself if you feel like you live in a society that doesn't even value even the smallest kind of basic rights that you should have?
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really heavy.
Yeah. The impact, yeah, the impact is huge of that. And I think it's really, really powerful what you're saying, I think, because the more, and this is one of the things I have been having conversations with queer women with recently, actually, is around their discomfort about doing things like holding their partner's hand, but still holding on to their partner's hand because they want people to see them. You know, they
Yeah.
know that if they can do it, and it's, you know, then not only does it kind of like help them to do something different, I suppose. It's about, you know, being proud of that and kind of leaning into that almost vulnerability as well there, but
Yeah.
also, you know, because there could be a mix of things going on. There could be the shame stuff, the internalized homophobia, our own stuff,
Yeah.
as well as judgment, or like you say, you know, there's lots of people like you, I hope, out there, wonderful, amazing allies who are like, yes, you know, I want to see more of that. Who do smile at you. You know, I've got some t-shirts and stuff, you know, that I've got like quite clearly kind of, you know, people read what they say, they know that I'm a gay woman or a lesbian or whatever, and they'll smile at me, you know, when they read my t-shirt, you know, and that makes me feel like really warm inside, you know, but it's not easy, you know. And of course the other thing is that, you know, in the UK we're not too badly off when it comes to equality. And I say that, I sort of say that kind of like, well, there's a lot of work to
I
do.
know. It's like
You know,
relative
if you
to,
look
yeah,
in other
relative to much of the
countries,
world, we do quite well, but still nowhere near good enough. Yeah, I
no,
feel,
no. And
yeah.
globally, you know, you know, I think we do need to look at it as a global pitch. You know, there's still over 70 countries in the world where it's illegal to be homosexual. It's a crime. You know, there's death penalty. I think I'm not sure, it changes all the time. 10 to 12 countries where it's a death penalty. So, you know, massive, massive amount of work to do. And again, one of the things I say a lot is that the queer community, the LGBTQ plus community, there's no way we can do it on our own. You know, we need everybody that can and wants to support us by creating inclusive spaces, by raising awareness and all of that stuff. Oh, I'm getting on the soapbox. I'll get off that for a minute.
No, it's so true. We do. We need this. We need to hear this message, and we need to hear your voice. And that's why I want to, like, I want to bring you to my platform, because, you know, I talk a lot about relationships, but this is something that I can't speak to from a point of personal experience. And I don't even want to try and claim that space. Why would I? Because here you are, Sarah, doing this incredible work. So on that note, I would love for you to tell us about what you've got going on at the moment. I think you've got a new course open, so I'd love for you to share that with people watching.
I have. Yeah. Thank you, Jo. Yeah, I'm going to tell you about my course. I'm just having a little look at my notes to see if there's anything else that I wanted to. No, there isn't. I've said about the fact that creating the inclusive spaces is really important. So if I didn't say it clearly enough, Jo, I really, really appreciate being here. And I loved what you said. And now I want to say it. And I loved what you said about your intention around your spaces. And I've noticed, and I really notice it, I'll tell you, Lucy Sheridan's, I did her 5-day challenge recently. And I think there's a bit of a delay on me talking and you hearing what I'm saying. But one of the first things that I noticed about that challenge was she asked people if they were to share their pronouns. And I was like, it made me feel such a small thing, but it made me feel so welcome, I suppose. And I guess the fact that she did that, and I noticed, and there was another couple of queer people in the community, in that group, and I messaged them and said, how did it make you feel? And they were like, I really noticed it, and it made me feel safer, you know. And it's not, we don't need to do huge stuff here to have an impact. So thank you so much for what you're doing. I really appreciate it. Yeah, so I've got a new course. I put it together really for this lockdown 2 in the UK, although it's open to anybody in the world, any women in the world. So it's for queer women who identify as women. And it starts on Monday. It's called Dare to Be You. And it's really focused on exploring who the true you is. Because I think sometimes that can be quite hard to really connect with, especially when we've got this low self-worth, shame, hiding, filtering, holding back, all of those things that are going on. It's like quite hard to actually dig deep into who we truly are, you know, who's our innate authentic self, really. So we're going to be looking at that. I'm going to be sharing with you some tools and frameworks to help you do that, and also giving you some coaching. It's a small group, so up to 10 women. I've got 4 spaces left at the moment. And we're also going to be looking at, you know, how can you, so I'm going to be giving the women that join me a framework to help them practice, you know, being more authentic in their lives, and noticing and exploring that, and also becoming aware of the patterns and the behaviors and the thoughts and the emotional responses that they're having at the moment. And, you know, really raising that awareness about that first, and then visualizing and looking at how they would like things to be different. So got 2 live workshops next week, some homework in between, not massive amount of homework, but, you know, a little bit. And yeah, we're running for about 10 days. I've got a Facebook group as well to support the women while we're together and working together. So yes, it's called Dare to Be You, and all the info's on the link in my bio here on Instagram. So yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you, Sarah.
Early bird shots tonight at 10 o'clock.
Oh, okay, good info. Time sensitive, guys. So I'll make sure to share the link in my stories as well, so you can just swipe up and find out more about this course.
Wonderful.
So thank you so much for coming and talking to me today, Sarah. I really, really appreciate your time and your expertise and this work that you're bringing to the world. It's so needed and valued, I know. So I know that there are a few people who got in touch who said that they wanted to watch this, but they couldn't make it at 1 p.m. when we went live. So this will be saved into my IGTV as well, so you can watch it back. But as Sarah said, if you're interested in her course, early bird closes at 10 p.m. tonight. So we're speaking on Friday. So 10 p.m. UK time, go and get one of those spots. Yeah, and thank you again, Sarah. And check out my stories if you're interested in Sarah's course.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jo, so much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. And the only other thing I want to say is, if anyone is watching now or watching the replay, and you're struggling with any of this stuff, anything that I've talked about is resonating, or even if you're questioning your sexuality and not quite sure, I talk to a lot of women about that as well. Just come over to my DMs and we can have a chat. So I'm always around and available for that too. So.
Oh, that's lovely. That's such a lovely, generous offer. Thank you, Sarah.
Bye-bye, Jo. Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.